Hello, this is the HHS meeting for June 7th, 2022, and we will start with the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Turn your mic.
I have it on. I'd like to call for an adoption of the agenda,
Romano
please.
adopts the agenda.
Fiscal, second.
Commissioner Romano adopted the agenda. The second was, support was done by Commissioner Van Sickle. Can we vote on that? Is there any discussion? Can we vote on that? Thank you.
Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you. We need a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion by Sabatini.
Support Matusik.
Commissioner Sabatini moved. The support was by Commissioner Matusik. Is there any discussion? We'll take a vote, please.
Motion passes 9-0.
Sorry, that health, this is the minutes are on the health services and the joint internal services, finance. We are now going to public opinion. This public opinion is for anything that someone would like to speak on that is on the agenda for 3 minutes. There will be another public opinion at the end of the meeting for anything anyone wants to speak on at all. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Once, twice? Thank you. That we'll end public opinion. We are now going to Health and Human Services Department. I have broken this up. Well, let me see. We have speakers first. First, we'll have Area on Aging, Pamela Moffett. Can we have a motion to recommend to full board?
Matusik moves.
Support.
Commissioner Matusik made the motion, and Commissioner Kraft made the support. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. My name's Amanda Sears. I'm actually not Pamela Moffett. I'm from Area Agency on Aging 1B. I'm here today to present our 2023 through 2025 multi-year plan. We represent one of 620 area agencies on aging across the country, and there's 16 in Michigan. We're designated by Congress and the state legislature to provide information, advocacy, and access to services for adults age 60 and over. We serve the 800,000 older adults in southeast Michigan in the 6 counties that we serve, which are Livingston, Macomb, Monroe, Oakland, St. Clair, and Washtenaw. This includes approximately 30% of Michigan's older adults by population, and we call the programs that we provide Older Americans Act programs. That's the federal act that funds them. And last year, our investments of state and federal funds were approximately, in Macomb County specifically, were approximately $12.6 million and helped serve over 18,000 seniors in Macomb County. We contract services out to local organizations. We also provide some direct services ourselves. And today I'm presenting, like I said, our multi-year plan. Each year we're required to put together a plan that details the services that we're going to fund and provide in the community. Every 3 years, we have to put together a 3-year plan. This is designated by the state, and we report this to the Michigan ACLS Bureau. That's the Aging and Community Living Supports at the state of Michigan. They give us the guidelines for our plan and our spending and how we can spend the funds, and then we report everything up to them. Our plan is required to be submitted to each of our 6 counties commissioners for adoption or approval. And then once that happens, it's submitted to the state, and we present to the State Commission on Services to the Aging for final approval. We follow October 1st through September 30th fiscal year, so this will be starting in October for the next 3 years. And the decisions and the plans that we put together in this document are based on public input and needs that we've identified. We've had 2 public hearings last month, one in person and one virtual that was well attended. And we took comments, recommendations, and incorporated some of those into our plan so that we could better serve the needs of the community. We also had listening sessions last November to start thinking about what we wanted to put into the next 3-year plan. We had a survey that was part of that and incorporated that into where services were prioritized. We get about $23 million typically. That's the estimate for Older Americans Act funding, which is invested in 2 ways. Like I said, we contract out to community partners to provide services such as Meals on Wheels, chore services, volunteer caregivers, and then we provide care management, information and assistance, and a few other services ourselves. The plan also includes some of the details on what we did in response to COVID. Some of you may remember in 2020, we gave out a lot of quarantine boxes that the state provided to us, and Macomb County was gracious and let us rent out some space in your warehouse so that we could store them and load them into everyone's cars and get them out to the community. And we worked with service providers to see what their needs were as well. And then ongoing issues related to the pandemic are a direct care workforce issue with not enough staff, which was a problem before COVID, but it's just gotten worse with, wages and transportation and all the different needs. So we're doing what we can to try to address that. We're also working with service providers to see what we can do about their costs, because we know that especially like Meals on Wheels, food costs and transportation costs are rising. So we're looking as we approve contracts for next year what we can do to anticipate probably lower units for the same or similar costs to reflect that. We put together also program development objectives for the 3-year period. So some of that is developing new resources and partnerships to strengthen and support aging services in our region, expanding access to and awareness of the resources that are available to caregivers and older adults, and looking at ways we can improve accessibility of services to different populations. So that covers it. Are there any questions?
I think it was a very comprehensive explanation. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I don't see any speakers here because I think everything you said was so perfectly explained to us. Thank you very much. That's quite an endeavor.
Thank you.
And I think we're good to go. If we can vote on this, please. I need a vote. Thank you, Ms. Sears.
All right, thank you. And if there's any questions, Commissioner Matuzak's on our board, so she can.
You made such a good presentation, we have no questions.
Great. And if you have more, there's 190 pages.
Just what we like. More information. Thank you so much.
Motion passes 10-0.
Thank you. Andrew, can you come forward, please? We have a budget amendment for the fiscal year for Andrew Cox, the health officer, to explain to us. I need a motion to recommend a full board, please.
I'll make a motion to recommend 60.
Support.
Commissioner Farrington made the motion. Commissioner Romanos, support. Thank you. Andrew.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Great to see you as always. I bring before you a request for a budget amendment for our COVID funds, which would include COVID immunizations, contact tracing, and infection prevention grant funds from MDHHS. The difference here and the amendment is for indirect costs. We just learned last month from the state that this would be an allowable expense to charge these grants, and so I think that's a good thing for us to charge county cost allocations and administrative overhead charges. So we're requesting that the budget be made for $1,084,000 for this budget amendment for these across these 3 different cost centers. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner and Chair Brown, please.
Thank you. Do you anticipate any other similar budget amendments of this type coming forward? I mean, or are you looking at other ways that you could bill that out?
Yeah, that's a great question, Commissioner. There's been some relaxation that the state is aware of, and even the feds are looking at these funds being utilized for other communicable diseases, outbreaks, and other usages that we could utilize these. And to some extent, we are doing that a little bit with our contact tracing, to utilizing those folks for educational purposes is really what it's turned into. It's still COVID related, but once we hope there's a relaxation and being able to utilize these funds elsewhere in a more general scope. I know there's talks going on. I can't give you exact time frame yet, but those are current conversations with the changing pandemic and these funds and being able to be utilized in different ways that'd be useful for our community.
Thank you. Take advantage of an opportunity that doesn't come along very often.
Absolutely.
So be good to get a bonus on some of the things we kind of pay back for all the grief we've been through. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, sir. We will take a vote at this time, please. Commissioner, are you back on the board?
Yeah, we're done.
Okay. Did you want to talk again?
No.
Yes and no. Okay. We're taking a vote, please.
Motion passes 10-0.
Thank you very
All
much.
right, thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Andrew, can I just want to ask you for just a question, please.
Sure.
In relation to the baby formula situation in the country, I wanted to just ask for the public what the situation is in Macomb County. If you've had any, how many calls you've had, or how is it coming to you? Can you explain, please? Thank you.
Yeah, obviously this is a very critical situation nationwide. And it touches home, not exactly here in Macomb County, but in Michigan with the Sturgis plant of the Abbott formula being shut down. We've been in close contact with our WIC clients to try to find out and evaluate hardships. Unfortunately, we don't have any control of, obviously, inventory, supplies. And the stores, those are private business entities that manage their own inventory. However, we're very concerned about the hardships that individuals, especially our low-income families that already are struggling to get by, very concerned about the health and well-being of the children. We have not had many reach-outs. Early on, there was some initial calls to our WIC program. We had a small amount of formula that we were able to give out to our clients that we had We don't have a huge stockpile or inventory, but we gave out what we had, and we'll replenish that once the supply is back and other individuals have a chance to get their children the formula they need. But we're very well aware of it. You feel a little bit helpless because this is a larger global supply chain issue that we're running into. But we have not had a whole lot of our residents reach out. And if we did, we'd certainly try to help them as best we could.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Commissioners, the staff has sanctioned off for us for a motion from C to E, from F to I, and from J to N, if that's acceptable. Can I get a motion, or is there a suggestion afterwards? Can I get a motion for that or not?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend full board 6C through E.
Support.
Thank you. Thank you, Ernest. So Commissioner Farrington motioned and Commissioner Hall supported. Thank you. Hi, Ernest.
Yeah. Well, while there are a dozen items here, they're both pretty straightforward. And so to be clear, right now you'd like me to present on C through E?
Yes, please.
Okay. So that covers Head Start and the diaper bank and then the ARP for Head Start. So starting from the top, the first one here, this is for the Head Start COVID-19 funding. You'll see a lot of that today. Essentially, we received this funding and the board received it back when we got it. We had to put in sort of a de facto budget on how we might spend it. And then when it comes time to spend it, we come before the board again. So with Macomb Community Action and our Head Start program, one of the most pressing issues this year has been teacher shortages. I don't know if you've seen this in high school and middle school. Virtual schooling is possible to a greater degree. In elementary school, virtual schooling just isn't a replacement for in-person classroom time. And this has put a real demand on early childhood teachers. This is something we've acutely seen in Macomb County. You know, in high school, I know it's sort of a celebration when you get a substitute teacher and maybe a movie day, but with children in elementary school, it doesn't matter if you have the best teachers in the country. If you change them out one after another, day after day, the kids lose the excellence of the program. So retention is really the most important thing we can do for stability in those Head Start classrooms. Of course, over the last 2 years, I've come to you for a number of things to increase the health and safety of our Head Start classrooms. But as you may know, our Head Start classroom only prioritizes the most vulnerable families in Macomb County. You know, we're left with a high portion of special needs children, a high portion of single parent families. And as you can imagine, over the last 2 years, we've had a lot of behavioral challenges, a lot of classroom hardships. And so one of the most important things for us to do, and what we're asking to use this COVID carryover funding for, as we've got more and more funding, we know our supplies are good, and so we were asked to transfer this from supplies over to support retention bonuses. Right now, if you're an early childhood teacher, you can get a $3,000 to $5,000 hiring bonus at one of those early childhood centers. It's imperative that the county works to keep and retain the excellent staff they have. And one thing you should know if you don't is we have one of the best Head Start programs in the state of Michigan. When we talk with the Michigan Head Start Association, we've long received accolades. We have an excellent staff, and we want to keep them that way. We know they have other offers, just like nurses are leaving hospitals. We know these teachers are a valuable commodity, and we're looking to use this excess funding as a retention bonus for those staff. Would you like me to go on to the next ones and do those in a group? So the next one here, it seems like a small amount, and it is. Essentially, the state of Michigan drummed up support for diapers. And it looked like it's going to be $1 million or $500,000. Well, by the time they divided it to all of the regions, we're getting $4,900. And that's why you see the name OLHSA under this, Oakland Livingston Human Service Agency. They're a peer to Macomb Community Action in Oakland. Essentially, once the state decided how much money they could portion off for diaper support, they asked for every region to have a regional entity administer it. For $5,000, we didn't want to be the administrator for all the entities, and Oakland Livingston was selected. And so this passes through them from the state, and our allocation, as you see, is $4,900. So we're going to work with the Head Start, Early Head Start program and our child care partnerships simply to provide diapers for their children. again, a small item, but one that we're glad the state of Michigan recognized was an essential need for support. And then the last one you'll see here under this grouping is another one for the American Rescue Plan. Again, we had to submit a budget that we parked it in, and now we are asking to use it for contractual expenses. Those contractual expenses are for our early Head Start and our child care partnership programs. Essentially, we run classrooms around the county. We run classrooms with Great Start Readiness Program in MISD classrooms. But for the youngest kids, we have partners that run like home daycare, and they'll do it with the EHS curriculum, child care partnerships. And so similar to how we were giving stipends to our classrooms, these are stipends for those partners who are contractors for our early Head Start and our child care partnerships programs. Again, just looking to recognize that they've had lower enrollment, they've had harder time keeping consistent days open. We're just helping them out weather the storm here. They're an indispensable partner in all that we do, especially for those young children in those classrooms. So those are items C, D, and E, if you have any questions on those.
I have, oh, I didn't see it.
Listed under details.
I did, yeah, I had my details open, but I didn't see it, I'm sorry.
When we do multiple ones, you got to stick to the first one to see the details.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I was going through. Well, I was there.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I was.
I'm totally in support of these retention bonuses. We clearly need to keep people in the classroom. I guess what I'm concerned about is these are sort of one-shot deals, and what is our plan for keeping people in the classroom next year and the year after that? This is an ongoing issue.
That's exactly the right question, Commissioner, and one that we've been asking as well. I know we have support both from the county executive, support obviously from human resources and finance to help us work on that challenge. You're right. This is a one-shot, and this is one-time money that we have to spend, and it makes sense. The longer question is, what can the county do to help maintain the Head Start program? We obviously believe investing in young children is a huge return on investment. It really helps a lot down the road, so we think this is some of the best bang for your buck you can get. Today, I can't tell you the answer. All I can tell you is we know that not just this next school year, but the school year after that, we're going to see the fallout from the last 2 years. And it's really important that we find some long-term solution. This isn't that. This is simply using the rescue plan dollars on a one-time basis, but I can tell you it's attracted the attention of the county and the community to really realize the imperative to a long-term solution for classroom stability.
Yeah, I think it's going to be just a totally critical issue for not just Head Start, but also public schools in our community. And I'm encouraged that you're thinking about it and talking about it. I think maybe we need to look at how we invest not just in wages for these folks, but figure out maybe some other creative things we can do with credentialing and continuing education that develops them in a way that's like also more bang for our buck.
That's right.
We need to keep these people in early ed.
As you point out, the pipeline is the hardest thing.
Yeah.
If today we wanted to hire them and we don't have the pipeline, there's no option. I can tell you, Macomb Community Action has been innovative in this realm for years. We actually allow you to be brought on without your child development certificate, and we'll pay for you to get the training to become child development certified. So we've recognized the need for promotion and retention and credentialing, because we need to have that pool and capacity even to hire from it. It's an area that not a lot of people are going into anymore.
Right.
So we do offer that educational support, and we promote that promotion potential to come on board, and we'll help you get the credentials that you need to eventually become the teacher in the classroom. So we'll see how we can double down on that.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kraft, please.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Ernest, quick question for you. So at the state, there was kind of a discussion about this too, and teachers getting a little bit of extra pay, you know, hazard pay, we'll call it.
Yeah.
And in the office, we had a call from a janitor, a custodian, who did not receive any sort of pay. And I'm looking at the list of folks that would receive this money, and again, the custodians / janitors are not listed. Is that something that we can't really control? How do we work janitorial and custodial services with the Head Start program?
That's a great question. You know, we have such an array of classrooms, it really depends. Most of our classrooms are actually in public schools, and so we're not even providing custodial. We give the school a stipend to cover our classroom among their building, and so that's out of our control. With our partners, they're simply given a contract to provide that classroom, and how they choose to do custodial is up to them. It's very rare that we actually have control of the custodial within our realm, and again, there are some staff left off this. We simply said, if we can only give it to so many, who should it be? It should be classroom-based staff and staff that interact with the families in their homes. And so that's sort of, we didn't have unlimited money. We said, how much can we divide it and still be meaningful? And so that's sort of where we drew the line. But it's a great point about custodians being valued members, and also, you know, being in harm's way in the schools.
And that was one of the arguments was, you know, the custodian was in the school, cleaning the school while people were at home learning virtually or wherever they were. So I didn't know what our situation was with that, and thank you for clarifying that.
I'm not as familiar with all of the districts within Macomb and how they've chose to do that. Again, it's sort of out of the purview of this contract.
Sure. Thank you, Ernest. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Van Sickle?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
6E, the last item.
Yeah.
Doesn't have a dollar amount mentioned, at least in the title.
Oh, geez. Well, if you add up those last two items between the decrease and the increase, it looks like it should be 258 something. Sorry about that.
It would be nice if it just had it in the title so we could pull it up to the top.
Absolutely, I agree. Sorry for that oversight.
Thank you. I'm done, Chair.
Thank you. How many children did you have in Head Start through the last quarter or the last half session? Or, I mean, how many children did
Usually
you end up with?
1,022 is about the number of children we run. I would have to get more updates if you want to know attendance for that, but about 1,022 students.
That's what you had, and then what were you running before COVID?
Well, no, that's how we've kept running that. There's been a lot of intermittent attendance.
Right.
And especially this last quarter, I'll tell you, we're seeing an uptick at the end of the year with COVID right now. Oftentimes, it leads to a classroom closure because we're short on staff. So there would be two different figures between enrollment and days of attendance or contact days. And I could get that information for you if you like.
So if you normally had 1,000, would you say you had 500?
Oh, no, we were still enrolled with 1,000, but we saw a lot more absenteeism. So a lot more of the times where, well, maybe the parent was home or the kid couldn't make it there, they had transportation, or, you know, a lot of times if a family member had COVID, they would just withhold the kid for a week. So it's sometimes hard to know why the kid's not there. We, of course, follow up and reach out to the family, but you wouldn't see our enrollment decrease. What you'd see is our number of, you know, daily attendance decrease.
So again, would you on a regular basis have 50% gone? So you have around 500 kids, or would you say you had on a regular basis 10% gone, 20%?
I can give you that figure. If I had to ballpark it, I'd say 20%, you know, sort of rotating outages, whether it's the whole classroom's out, a kid's out for a week, you know, because of COVID exposure. You know, obviously, we're also saying if you're sick, that was one of the warning signs. That's what we told all county employees. Even if you're sick, you don't know, so just stay out. So it's hard to tell when it was that. I mean.
Right, that sounds like a more feasible, that sounds like a feasible percentage. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll have a vote now.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you. The next suggested motion to recommend to full board would be F through I. Is there a motion?
Matusik moves items F through I.
Nard supports.
All right, Commissioner Matusik made the motion, and Commissioner Nard supported. Thank you.
All right, these first two ones you've actually seen here, both F and I, or around the RAP program, the Great Lakes Water Authority program that helps us both help residents with water utility bill arrearages, as well as home repairs, which we call conservation, to conserve wastewater utilization. You've actually approved these contracts. The only thing we're doing here is originally they were misclassified as federal revenue, and they need to be reclassified as outside organization funding. So this isn't for new funding. They were simply miscategorized as federal. We need to clear it up and make sure we understand it's coming from Great Lakes, and that isn't a federal source. So this is just a category correction. And then for H and I here, for this one, again, for our weatherization program, I think this is one of the unsung heroes in Macomb County. We do a lot of work in weatherization, and there's a reason that weatherization is one of the issues with bipartisan federal and state support. It's because everybody agrees that making sure that a home is weatherized and has less waste and less deterioration over time is good for everybody. The property owners, the tax base, the city. So we do great work in here. And because that's been recognized, we've received a lot of extra money over the course of the year. What we're asking to do here is to reallocate it from salaries, wages, and operating expenses over to contract services. The way that we operate the weatherization program is we have energy auditors and quality assurance technicians. We hire the staff that inspect the work, approve the work to be done, and then double check that the contractor has done the work we ordered to be done up to our specifications. And so that's sort of the balance of how we operate weatherization. Some people hire those employees that actually do the repairs. That can be a turbulent model because in years where we have less funding, we'd have to lay off county employees, right? And so not only is this an important program, we are one of the best in the state. And I know you hear me say that a lot, and I'm biased, but this also, you can ask the state of Michigan. They would agree. If you remember, that's why we were helping out Oakland County. We have one of the best weatherization programs. So we have a delicate nuance here is that we rely on contractors. And we have the certified inspectors and auditors to make sure that we know what work needs to be done and we double check the work. And so as we've worked through the budgetary year, we realize we have more money for contract services, which what you should read into that is that's direct services to residents. Those contractors are who we pay directly to do the repairs in the home with our staff double checking it in that process.
Ernest,
so this, yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought you were going to finish.
Oh, I was just going to say, this is good news. This means we've freed up more money from overhead to go right to homes in Macomb County.
Thank you. Commissioner Hall, did you have a question that
Yes, I did,
I saw
Madam
your,
Chair.
I saw it, I looked, I didn't see your name, and then we went on. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
Oh, it's there.
Yeah, I saw it. When I looked, I didn't see it, and then I saw it
Okay,
as he went on.
thank
I'm sorry, thank you.
Ernest, thank you, and thank you for all that you're doing. You used the terminology instead of federal, outside organizational funding.
Yes.
Could you define outside organizational funding?
The outside organizational funding that I was mentioning is under the RAP budgets, not the weatherization, but the RAP. So RAP is a program by Great Lakes Water Authority. Essentially, that stands for it's not the state and it's not the feds and it's not the county and it's not necessarily philanthropy. So, you know, when you have an instance, it's a rather rare instance that somebody like Great Lakes Water Authority, a municipal water authority, is giving us money in a program like this. And so most of the money we do receive, we attract money from outside Macomb County, federal and state, into Macomb. This is a category that's used much less often. And this is just how we would designate the Great Lakes Water Authority.
Okay. I guess I was unaware Great Lakes Water Authority had any money, but that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Romano?
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Ernest.
Hi.
Question here on your weatherization.
Yeah.
You mentioned the fact you hired contractors to check these out to make sure that this is, doesn't DT do the same thing for free? I'm just asking because I've received stuff in the mail.
Sure. I guess it depends what type of project we're talking about. DTE may well inspect your furnace to see.
No, weatherization. They'll come out and check where you lose heat, where it's coming from.
Take the thermal gun and do all of that, sure. So they'll assess the issue. If you have a contractor do a repair, I would question whether DTE will say, we will assess the work of the contractor to see if the work was up to code and specifications and the quality mandated. What I do know is that it takes a long time to get something called an energy auditor certification. That's what we're required to get for the weatherization program. So similar to Head Start, we have a pipeline to help train energy auditors and the quality assurance technicians, as they're called. I can check into see if we can use any free labor from the utility companies, but in general, we want to make sure that the money that the government spends is well spent, and we can hold contractors accountable to any subpar repairs that they make.
It makes sense when I hear what you're saying. It does make sense, but then again, as you said, looking back for free service,
sure.
If DTE comes out for weatherization, and that's what they do, and come up with a list,
that's right.
And we can use that list for the contractors that go in to do the work. You're still going to check on the contractors, yes?
It's a great question. I'll reach out and ask them. I bet what they're doing is coming out with a thermal gun, and they're shooting that gun to say, well, do you have heat leakage or cooling leakage around your windowsill or around your door? What about your attic or your ducts? They're probably giving a general assessment on if you're leaking heat or leaking cold air. But I'll have to find out more about that.
Just a suggestion. They'll do it to your home. All you gotta do is make a phone call. It's free service. See what they do. It might fit in with the program that we're using. Save a few bucks.
Sure. I'll give them a call, and I'll start with my own home and see how they do it.
Thanks, Ernest. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Farrington?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm just going to chime in with Commissioner Romano.
Yeah.
When I said on energy at the state level, I believe they do it for low income, and they're required under law.
Sure.
So it is something to look into consumers in DTE.
Absolutely.
Because it's for low income specifically.
Hey, if we can get some free labor from DTE
I don't know
consumers,
the specifics of it. I just was surprised when I heard about it.
Yeah.
Because the whole idea is, why would the energy company want to decrease energy usage?
Right.
And the answer came back, it's a lot cheaper than building a huge power plant.
That's right.
So,
that's right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Van Sickle?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Ernest.
Good afternoon.
Getting back to the weatherization, you mentioned coming out possibly with a thermal gun, a sensor or something. So does that mean that weatherization can only be done seasonally when we're heating or when we're cooling, and it can't be done just when we have all the windows open?
No, not necessarily. It really depends on what you need. If you remember, a couple months ago, I brought a weatherization item before the board called deferral. Oftentimes, we can go up into your attic and tell whether you need insulation. We can do that regardless, right? And so that's when we often go up. But what happens sometimes is we say, well, we can put insulation in your attic, but your roof needs to be replaced. And we're not allowed to spend government money on attic insulation if your roof's leaking, because we consider that money wasted, right? So that's what we're in the process of doing right now, is using that money approved for the deferrals. We go back to jobs where we say this was a qualified household, a qualified individual, and a qualified job, but they needed a roof replaced. So the state of Michigan heard that, and they gave us some money to replace those roofs. So many things we can do without, whether it's summer or winter. We can simply say, hey, it looks like you need insulation in the attic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think you can go back to your work there, Ernest.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that's the end of.
Are you at I?
Oh, sorry. No. I got one more good to go here.
Okay.
Long list here. Let me get that up. Oh, so this is a really simple one. Funding increase. LIHEAP is one of the things that we replace furnaces through, and other energy assistance. And this is simply an increase. We had about $300,000. We're increasing it by $500,000. Our total allocation, as you can see in the backup material, this is an increase from the state just to give us more money for this good work. They know there's a lot of demand out there for it.
Are there any more speakers? Just want to make sure. I think we will take a vote, please.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you. I would like now to see if I can get a motion for J through N. Move to full board.
So moved by Nard.
Support Hall.
Commissioner Nard made the motion and Commissioner Hall supported. Thank you very much. there we go.
All right,
Thank
this
you,
is
Ernest.
another diverse set of items. The first one is a good news, bad news story. So what you see here is that we're transferring funding. The Macomb Food Program is an independent nonprofit. Every year they help give money to the Macomb County Food Program. We supply a lot of food pantries. In fact, 72 food pantries around the county. You know, they've had a harder time raising donations. The good news is we've had some increased success raising donations. You may have seen the Letter Carriers Food Drive went out. It's usually a hallmark event. It actually produced 50% as much as usual this year. Right? So, I mean, it's just been a hard season, but I'll tell you, I actually counted that as a success. It's been a really hard couple of years for independent, you know, events. A lot of the events that people usually do, the fundraisers have been canceled. They don't see as much funds raised through those virtual events. So the good news is it's not just a straight decrease. We had budgeted for it to be a donation, which we usually receive. We ended up making a lot more of it internally, donations directly to us. So we didn't receive as much as we usually did from the nonprofit, but we got more donations sent in just to Macomb County for the good work we do. You may recall during the pandemic of the last 2 years, a lot of households have gone out to those food pantries. They've gone out to the food drives. We've partnered with Gleaners and Forgotten Harvest. So really, a lot of people were willing to accept food. They didn't want to apply for welfare. They didn't want to apply for benefits. They knew it was temporary, but they would come out and get the food. So we've seen a tremendous increase in the demand for food. So we're glad that we were able to receive so many donations for that. The next item here, similarly, because we were receiving so much food, there is a category called bonus within the Emergency Food Assistance Program. You'll see that called TFAP. The TFAP program is the Emergency Food Assistance Program from the feds. Usually we get a lot of food and we count the in-kind value of the food. During the pandemic, we were receiving food, you know, from non-traditional sources, or we were getting notices that month that they had extra shipments they could send our way. We actually, because those were non-traditional sources, we didn't end up capturing the in-kind value of that donated food. So this is another good news item. We're simply asking to recognize the $1.3 million of food that we got as an in-kind donation. Again, we calculated a lot more than that as in-kind donations, but there were some of these non-traditional food sources that got shipped to us at the last minute. They weren't categorized in our in-kind calculation. So this is simply saying, as we caught up and we recognized all the food that we received that was extra or non-traditional, we're recognizing the value, the in-kind value of that food that was donated. Yeah.
Commissioner Matuzzi?
A question related to the food part of this.
Yeah.
The public school year is about to end, and with it, the funding that's providing meals. We have a lot of hungry kids over the summer, and during COVID, we were able to continue to send home food packages and to do some other things. Do we have plans this summer for any food distribution?
I am not aware of what the MISD or, you know, the summer feeding programs are doing this year. I know during the pandemic, as you said, instead of the meet up, eat up site as it's called, where you can come and get all you want to eat, but you got to come there. We recognize we can't gather 100 kids in a cafeteria, so we were simply sending out bagged food. But again, that's not necessarily through the county, that's often through the school districts. And I will write that down to follow up. We certainly usually promote that to our Head Start families, but we are not the ones operating that. Usually meet up and eat up sites are operated by the districts in the summer. And I would encourage advocacy on all the commissioners' behalf to the state to make sure that you recognize the imperative of funding that.
I think it's really critical. A lot of kids depend on the school lunches and breakfasts they get to sustain them.
Yeah.
And that's really important. Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Chair Brown?
Thank you, Ernest. Thank you, Chair. Ernest, you just provided us a list of who donated the food. The 1.3 million broke down by who made the contributions. Just
sure. We have a lot of food donated through the food carriers, the letter carriers food drive. We don't necessarily know who. We don't know if Commissioner Brown put it out, but this 1.3.
I mean, leather carrier drive maybe, or maybe a certain set of farmers or something.
Sure.
Whatever. Just not specific, but
yeah,
in the general category, so we know where it came from.
Sure, we could get that for you.
Because there may be local partners that we're not aware of that maybe deserve a thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Ernest. Go ahead.
Okay. So the next one here is around our emergency rental assistance program, Sarah. Believe it or not, we're coming to the end of the program. It has been a long road. And as I often have extolled to the commissioners, this program also is a landlord subsidy. Effectively, we are providing support to all these landlords and small businesses. As a realtor, I mean, a lot of people are renting out just one house, maybe their parents' house they didn't sell. We have a lot of landlords that need that rental income. So this isn't just a success for our low-income residents. This is benefiting a lot of landlords. And this request here is just saying that they're giving us some extra money. For your information, right now, to date, we've received 18,000 applications. We have funded over 14,000 of those. And we have about 4,000 left that are still in the pipeline waiting to be processed. You will hear news soon that the state of Michigan is going to close down the Sarah portal at the end of June. So essentially what's going on, and when you hear that, don't think it's closing, we're going to stop processing these applications. What the state doesn't want to have happen is that we keep accepting applications till we run out of money. And then we have 5,000 applications in the pipeline and, Ernest says, hey, I submitted my application 3 months ago. Why didn't you just tell me then you weren't ever going to be able to fund me? So as a preventative measure, the state will be closing down the Sarah portal at the end of June. Who knows, they may extend it a week, but that's the plan right now, so that we can work through this backlog. Right now, we've processed the 14,000, we have 4,000 more, we're receiving more, and we believe that that will get us to our spending. But right now, this is why MISHDA is also reallocating some of that funding to change it around. And this specific item is going into operating expenses, and as you should read that, that is the direct payments to residents. Right? So again, we talked about this before. We have to budget conservatively the maximum possible expenses we'd have administratively to process these applications, chase down forms. And so, by default, we see it as our fiduciary responsibility to conservatively budget more on staff and salaries, as much as we might use. And as we get toward the end of the funding, we say, okay, now we believe we can free that up to be direct payments to landlords. And that's what this is doing here. We're recategorizing some of the funding and saying we're now comfortable making sure that all of that goes out directly to landlords to help the rental assistance. The next one here is for United Way Basic Needs. We've long been a partner with United Way of Southeastern Michigan. Every year, in fact, we get basic needs. If you've looked historically, what do we usually use that money for? Rental assistance. So traditionally, we've used it a lot for people facing eviction, people behind on their bills. So this year, again, we said, well, we really don't need it for rental assistance. And we looked at some of the AAA funding. You may have heard AAA made some changes. It makes it impossible for us to fund ramps, wheelchair ramps. So we said, well, next year, we're probably going to have to use this money for emergency safety net services like we've done every year. But in this year, we have a unique opportunity. We have all this other funding for rental assistance and utility assistance. Let's use this somewhere that we know there's a gap. Because of the AAA changes, we can no longer fund those ramps. So we said, quick, let's make sure we get more ramps in the community, because the good thing about these ramps, they're reusable, they're customizable. We simply buy those aluminum frame parts, and if you come to my house and I'm a straight shot, you just use 10 parts. You go to Commissioner Matuzek's house, she has to wind around, I need 20 parts. So every time somebody is done with the parts, we make sure they're in good condition and we can redeploy them. They're like Lego pieces, right? So this is not just we're going to use it and those are all the residents who will be served. We're adding to our inventory of ramp parts, so we'll continue to benefit Macomb residents as we redeploy those and collect those around the community for the ramps. And then the last item here is simply more good news and straightforward. This carryover is from, our partner left, from AAA 1B. As they get to the end of their year and they have people underspending, again, the good news is Macomb County has an excellent track record of spending all of its funding and spending it in efficient ways for effective purposes. And so the AAA 1B, it's a small amount of money, but they said, hey, we have extra money. We'd like to reallocate it to you as a good partner. And so they were looking to give us $17,000 of their carry forward funding. And you can see the list of eligible services. Just for your information, the only one that I don't think is straightforward there is Story Care. The first item, 1A, Story Care is an electronic medical record, specifically for adult daycare centers. So with this additional $17,000 of funding, AAA 1B said, we'll give you this and we'd like you to use it for these 5 eligible purposes. And they put estimates there as to what they thought those would cost. And they have pretty good estimates.
Thank you. Commissioner Farrington?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thanks, Ernest. Actually, I want to go back to L.
Yeah.
You were saying you reappropriated or changed the money over to more operations to help the landlords, but I was thinking of what you said there, that it's 1.6 million you had in contract services that sounds like you never intended to have in contract services to begin with, based upon what your own comments were.
Yeah, there are a lot of moving parts here, not necessarily. So one of the, again, this is a large pool of money, about 75 million, right? And so one thing we had done to make sure that we were respecting Macomb County employees is we didn't want to see a repeat of the recession in 08, where a lot of people had to staff up just to lay off. When we received this era money, we said, we know this is only going to last a few years. So we don't want to bring on employees and then have the grant funding go away. So what we did is we worked out a contract with United Way and the 211 line. I don't know if you know the 211 line, but like 911, you can call 211 right now and be connected to United Way, and they navigate community resources. So we got a specific contract with United Way to say, what we can give you is the piece of work for customer service. We're getting hundreds of phone calls, a day sometimes. And so we're going to contract with you to talk people through the MSHDA portal. If they're having online challenges, logging onto the system, uploading their attachments, understanding the requirements, if they're just calling because it's been 30 days and they want an answer as to the status. So our main contract there has been with the United Way and then the Information Center, doing similar work, helping to make sure that we have county staff that we believe we can keep hired in the long term, despite this tremendous influx in work. So honestly, we weren't sure how much we would need those contractors or how much we wouldn't, but our commitment to structuring those contracts was so that Macomb County government wouldn't hire employees that had to be laid off after the grant ended. This is significant funding.
So the United Way contract has been eliminated or reduced?
I wouldn't say it's reduced, it's only increased, but it just didn't increase to the level it might have. So they continue to process all of the calls, and I can tell you right now.
But it's lower than what you had projected as budget
yes,
time.
Yes. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
I see no more speakers, so I will take a vote, please.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you all.
Sorry, I did, this ends the HHS part of the meeting. This goes to Finance, to Commissioner Sabatini.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next item is 8A, Treasurer's Office 2022 First Quarterly Report. Need a motion to receive and file.
So moved by Nard.
Support Van Sickle.
Made by Nard, supported by Van Sickle. We have Joe Biondo here. If there are any questions, get to that screen. Okay, seeing no questions in regards to the Treasurer's report, please vote.
Joe's never got off that easy.
No, he hasn't.
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay, next item is Finance Department's 2022 First Quarterly Report. Need a motion to receive and file. Made by Haw, supported by Zinner and Steve.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Good to see everyone again.
Steve, I could have asked the commissioners if they had any questions, but you immediately came to the podium, so we'll let you
there's
speak.
something I want to point out. I normally keep my comments brief, and I will. I normally concentrate on expenses quite a bit in the general fund, and as of last pay, we are running about 96% of budget, so that's good news. But what I really wanted to point out was on page 427. This has to do with the capital improvement plan. If you may have noticed, we had a revenue in there of $3.9 million, and that actually should have been an expense. That's all related to the funding of the Workday project that the commissioners approved in March. So if you look at the previous page, which is a balance sheet of the capital improvement fund, I've talked about $15 million being in there. It's actually, the report shows 19 million because we had revenue that was recorded instead of an expense. So there's about $11.3 million in that fund as of today. So that's my...
I thought it was additional revenue from the treasurer's office.
Unfortunately, it was a posting error. So that's since been corrected, and that'll be reflected on the second quarter report.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Actually, I have a couple questions. If you could just get back to me, to our staff on these. It's one of the entries is BU 124089. It's a $50,000 training roll forward from capital projects, and then
can you repeat the number for me, please?
BU 124089.
Okay.
And then there's another set, which is BU 124104 and 105. There's a $392,000 adjustment there.
Okay.
You can look into those.
Yep, certainly.
And then in regards to the open positions, so we have 352 open positions as of the end of the first quarter. Do you know how many of those positions have been filled in the second quarter?
Since March 31st? Yeah. No, I don't.
Okay.
I can find that. It's almost time to prepare the second quarter report with the same schedule, so you'll have a better idea.
Okay. I'm just curious in how many
people
we're hiring based on the job market and what's going on out there.
Yeah, the sheriff's department's having some difficulty, as I understand, filling deputy positions and so on. So that may remain somewhat consistent. Mental health always seems to have a fair number open, as Commissioner Kraft knows. And that's a large portion of the total vacancy count. Is mental health 84 of the 300. So and that's a fairly consistent number. So when you get the second quarter report, that'll give you kind of a flavor. But I don't know as I stand here today.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, please vote. Got off easy, Steve.
On that item.
Motion passes 11-0.
Spoken with experience.
So the next item. Okay.
We're just waiting for the vote here.
Oh.
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay, next item is Finance Audit Budget Department recommendations. So budget amendment for the Finance Department for 2020 audit fees increase of $8,500. Need a motion to recommend this to full board.
So moved by Nard.
So as you'll recall, when
and
the
supported by
auditors
Fairchild.
were here in April to present the 2020 single audit, I mentioned to you that we had a situation where we had to refile the single audit report within 3 days to miss the deadline because there was 3 programs, all related to commodities actually, where the expenses were on the books properly, but the revenue was not classified properly as revenue, or federal revenue, pardon me, so it wasn't reported to the auditors that way. We were informed of that about a month after we filed the original report. So the auditors had to do some additional procedures in order for us to be able to refile by the federal deadline. So not their fault. It is what it is, and they had to do extra procedures, and they billed us for $8,500.
Okay. Seeing no speakers, please vote.
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay, next item, contract amendment by Moran, fiscal year 2021, single audit services for $26,500 plus $5,500 for each additional major plan. Need a motion to recommend this one to full board.
So moved by Nard.
Support Romano.
Made by Nard, supported by Romano. Steve?
So this is related to the following year's single audit as indicated in the item, and the reason for the increase is essentially due to the large influx of federal money. So as you know, we had CARES money for $152 million. We spent that over 2 years. Ernest just mentioned we had $75 million of rental assistance money and a lot of other programs that required additional work on the part of the auditors that they could not have anticipated 5 years ago when they bid their contract out. So they have come to us and said that the base fee will be $52,500 instead of $26,000, and then each major program is an additional $5,500. So there's this particular change here for the contract. The next item is a related budget amendment for that, where I've estimated, based on 8 major programs, an increase in our 2021 audit fee of about $71,500. Now, let me make this comment as well. These items are written as, or let me back up, sorry. The budget amendment is written as being entirely the responsibility of the general fund. Some of these programs will absorb specific audit fees on their programs. When we identify all the major programs, we will charge as much of this out to the grants as we can. But for simplicity, at this point, we're assuming it will all be assumed by the general fund.
Okay, so we didn't put these 2 items together in the vote. Just to be clear here, so the 52.5 is the base with $5,500 for each additional major program?
Up to 5. So the base includes 3 major programs and then 5. I think I have the math actually on page 443. So it's $52,500 for the first 3 major programs and $9,000 for each program for the next 5 to get to a total of 8. So that would bring the total audit fee to $241,500, which includes the financial piece of the audit of $144,000 compared to $170,000 is what our estimate is currently without any change.
Okay, Commissioner Ha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think you almost answered the question I was going to ask. When it says $5,500 for each additional major program, do you and the auditors agree on what is a additional major program? Or
yes, they determine.
They don't define it.
It's defined basically by federal regulations. So they have to identify a certain level of dollar value to audit overall, and they also have to identify a certain number of individual programs to audit. So they will tell us what the major programs are when they decide. And every year there are generally around 8 major programs.
Do you get into an agreement with them on what's considered major and not major? I mean, $5,500 for each one is. So they walk in and say we got 100 major programs.
What's that?
They walked in and said we have 100 additional major programs.
If they walked in with 100 major programs, I would want to sit down with them and tell them, show them, have them show me how they identified those. And we get the list anyway. They tend to be pretty identifiable.
Okay.
I would
hope you'd want to fire them if they did that.
There's generally no surprise when they come and say, here's our list of.
There's no surprise here.
Right, there's no surprise.
Okay, so you're not going to come back with 100 additional major programs at
No, I've already had that discussion with them.
Very
and they're generally comfortable it's going to be 7 to 8.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you, Chair. Steve, the $5,500 is on top of the original $4,000 for each major program.
That's to get to the $9,000.
So it's actually $9,500 for each major program, correct?
Did I do the math wrong?
It's
9,000 per major program.
9,500, correct? If you look at the,
you look at the
actual proposal on page 2.
Oh, it is 9,500. I'm sorry.
So it's
So it's $500 more times, so it's $2,500 more.
okay. So
My apologies.
why would the cost of each major program more than double? I mean, if there were more programs,
It's the
because
level
of what's happening with the federal government, I could see them saying, okay, we're going to be, or the original single audit, that was the original quote for what they thought on this, which is something they'd never done before, right?
So as I understand, it's due mostly to the complexity of the programs being audited.
Okay, and
So there's
then,
more procedures necessary, or they're anticipating more procedures necessary because of the complexity.
so the original audit fee quote was $2,600 for 5 major programs.
Correct.
And the proposed new one, if you just took 5 major programs on the additional, it would be 45. It would be 45,000 instead of 26,000, right? I mean, it would be 9,500, but 9,000 times 5. So say I look at the single audit and I go, okay, the original's 26,000.
Mm-hmm.
Then I look at and that includes 5 major programs. And then I look at the change, and just for each additional program being 9,500, if you just take the 9 times 5, you're already at 45,000 for the same cost for 5
major programs. And they're increasing the base just to, there's rental assistance and cares are the main 2 of the 3. So they're going to do 3, and that's going to be 52,500 just for those 3 that are identified.
So the first quote was 5 for 26,000, and the second quote is, never mind, we'll do 3 for 52,000.
Complexity.
Which is fine.
Right.
Haven't seen this before, never did it before.
Right.
So they come in and they say, we were way off the mark. We're not going to do 5 programs for 26. We're going to do 3 programs for 52. Okay, accept that. Then on top of that, we're not going to charge you for additional ones 4,000. We're going to charge you for additional
95.
ones
Right.
9,500, which is more than double. So
What I can do and suggest is that we have them come in before full board. Could do that.
I think that's up to the
Yeah.
board, but
Because they'll be able to explain more of their methodology than I can.
I guess if the base didn't change, but
Right.
the per major program changed, I might go okay. Or if the base changed dramatically, but the amount per each extra program, I'd say okay. But that's not what happened.
Everything went
the
up.
charging for everything
Yeah,
changed.
everything went
It's
up. I
pretty.
get it.
It's pretty shocking. Okay.
I agree, but
I mean, I know it has to be done, and we can't right
single
now.
audit has to be done. There's no.
It's got to be done.
Right.
And we're not at a point now where we can just go out to bids for another auditor for this. This stuff has to be done.
Right, and this is the last year of their audit, so they will be going out to bid this summer. This is the last of their 5
Yeah.
years.
All right, thank you. Yeah, but even if we decided, no, we don't want you to do it, we don't really have an option.
No, and it's generally not advisable to have one set of auditors do your single audit and another do your financial audit, because you end up with, duplicate procedures as it relates to evaluating internal controls. And Commissioner Sabatini and I had this conversation last week. So you get some duplicate work going on,
And pay
not
more
necessarily program level work, but general control level work has to be duplicated. So it'll
All
probably
right.
cost you more money overall anyway.
All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Steve, have you reached out to other county finance directors that use other firms to see if this is normal? If this is, if they're using other firms and if they're doing this as well?
No, I haven't. What I can tell you is Plante Moran also uses Wayne County, or does a Wayne County and
They do a
Oakland
lot,
County.
right?
Same situation
Right.
there. I haven't reached out statewide or
Okay.
anything. If you'll remember, they came back last year for an increase as well. Not nearly to this degree, but they
Right.
came back last year relative to the 2021 or 2020 single audit as well.
Okay. I was just wondering if this sort of jump was consistent among other firms. So thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Matuzak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the last year of their contract,
Last year of a 5-year, yes.
the last year of 5 years.
Right.
And so we will be bidding this out, requesting
Probably next month,
proposals.
probably in July.
Probably in July. It seems really interesting to me that they raised the rate this dramatically in the last year of a contract. And I would like you to express to them, this is pretty outrageous, and we will not look favorably on it when we seek other people to do this work. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Farrington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steve, just curious, what happens if we say no?
If we say no, I suppose
I mean, because
they-
we're already contracted with them to do the work, correct?
We did, based on that number of federal, yeah, I suppose if we said no, maybe they could say they can't complete their work. I don't know how that would work, but, and if they said they couldn't complete their work, then that just opened up, that's an entire can of worms.
The way we don't want to go.
Yeah,
Okay.
you don't want to go that direction. I know where you're going.
I don't care. I was just, I'm like, it looks like we don't have an option. Like, they could have tripled it, and we don't have an option.
Yeah, it's an increase in scope is what they're purporting.
Yep.
But
all right, thank you very much.
we are sort of in a corner.
Yeah, thank you.
Steve, just so I'm clear here, the original proposal was for a single audit with 5 programs.
Mhm.
The new proposal is a single audit, and it's basically, 3 programs in there, and then each major thereafter.
so
Is that
the
correct?
So the first proposal was 26,000 for up to 5 major programs.
Correct.
Plus 4,000 for every
Right.
additional. So
Mhm.
they generally are at 8.
Okay.
The new one is 52.5 for the 3 that they've identified already.
Okay.
Plus the extra $5,500 for
No,
every,
9,500.
Well, the extra. So it's 4,000 to 9,500
Okay.
for every additional. Anticipating another 5.
Yep. Okay. I just want to be clear. It's just
Yeah.
everyone was clear.
And again, I apologize for the math. We can correct the math.
I got it down. And this is all coming out of the general fund, this increase.
That's the way I'm anticipating it now. If we can charge it to any administrative expense in one specific grant, we will do as much as we can.
Okay. Going back to the last item, we got hit with the $8,500 additional procedures invoice that we
Correct.
just approved.
Right.
If that happens again this time around, are they going to bill us again for that type of a scenario, if that was to?
I would expect so.
Okay.
I would expect because those are, again, extra hours that were not because they.
Have they identified that in the proposal or anywhere in
No,
the
this
contract?
just relates specifically to known programs, I'll say that way.
Okay. Okay. Seeing no other speakers, please vote.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, next item, I know we didn't put these together, so 9C budget amendment, Finance Department for the 2021 single audit services for $71,500. Need a motion to recommend the full board.
So move, Hall.
Made by Hall, supported by Nard. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay, next item is 10A, which is ordinance 2022, we don't have the actual number yet, but an ordinance to establish comprehensive contracting and purchasing policies and procedures to amend previously adopted contracting and purchasing policies and procedures. We need a motion to recommend this to full board.
Mr. Chair, point of clarification. Are we going to discuss this and look at other options before making a motion to refer it to full board? If not, I'm going to make a motion to table this until we've had an opportunity to sit with Budget and Finance and get their opinions of all the hard work that the committee has put together.
Fair enough. I don't have a problem. I mean, we obviously need to have a discussion here. In session. I know we have our independent counsels here as well to answer any questions. We can change the motion and either make a motion to move this back to next month's committee, but I think we need to have a discussion. In order for us to have a discussion, we have to recommend this to full board unless there is another way.
But the point being, we've already had this discussion with a different item previously. Once we make the motion to refer it to full board, the anticipation is it'll be on the next full board's agenda. So therefore, if that's the intent, I do agree we need to discuss it, but if the intent is to have it moved to full board, then I'm going to make a motion to table this until sometime in the future.
Okay.
May I join his point of order?
Sure.
You can support my motion.
Well, I was kind of hoping to have a discussion, and if we table, that won't happen. But there is no recommended motion on here, so I thought it was for discussion purposes. If you look at the attachments, there's no recommended motion. And because of that, I thought it was for discussion purposes only. And so
I'm under the anticipation that we're having a discussion today with independent counsel to answer any questions. So
okay, so can we just do this as a discussion item then?
I have no problem with that unless someone else has an objection.
Yeah, because at the beginning of the intro, when you read it, you said you were looking for a motion to refer it to full board.
Yep. And I'm reading exactly what's in front of me. So
I know how that is.
So we'll change that motion.
I'll make the motion for discussion on the ordinance.
Support by Nard.
A and B.
A and B together?
Both.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So we have independent counsel here. Pete, do you want to give us a quick summary of this, or the work group? I know the work group worked on this. Commissioners Farrington, Matuzak, Van Sickle, and Wallace. Does someone want to tee this up, this discussion? Crickets?
Well, it was, if I may, Chair, it was my suggestion to form the committee with Commissioner Farrington chairing it when we had this type of discussion in the past. So I guess I would ask Commissioner Farrington to tee it up.
Thank you very much. Shall I?
I love volunteering him anyways.
Yeah, two things. One, I didn't know you're the one that volunteered me, so thank you. Didn't know I was chair of it either, so thank you for that. It's been about 3 months, so I might forget some stuff, but I'll highlight as I remember it, and please, other members, Van Sickle or Matuzak, please add in, or Pete. If I remember right, it came about because multiple members of the commission asked us to review it, to update it, to see if there was a recommendation of changes. Specifically in the area of bidding professional services, and then just some of that was probably the primary goal of looking at, and then just point by point looking at it to see if we want to continue as is or if there's changes. I know a couple of them were, as far as bidding out, it was following the ethics rules where second cousins had to be listed, and people didn't understand why second cousins were. I don't even know who my second cousins are, for God's sake. So it was just little minutia like that. But I think the onus of it originally came about because multiple members wanted to look at bidding out professional services and what we bid out. So that was my recollection. Commissioner Matuzak or Van Sickle, if you want to add to it.
One of the other areas we looked at were emergency contracts, which is section number 5. I don't know what section it is. It's on page 6. That was a large discussion we had, given our experience at the end of last year and people coming to us saying, you must approve this minute. There were also you'll see a lot of just general cleanup, capitalization, commas, that sort of stuff. But mostly it was the professional contracts, emergency contracts, and that's about it. I mean, there was not huge, we met like 3 times, but there wasn't overall huge changes that we made. And we tried to follow some guidance from our independent counsel.
Commissioner Van Sickle, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I was just going to, I believe, clarifying a little bit, emergency contracts made an emergency because people let them go too long and didn't introduce them in a timely enough fashion. So it isn't like we had a dam break and we had an emergency. It was an emergency. It was a self-created emergency. Thank you.
Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you, Chair. I know it's been a while, so I just want to put some things on your radar. The first is 2.3A4. We're removing the exemption for county exec's office professional services. And just for a little bit of background, we always had that we did not get involved in expenditures out of the county exec's office, and he did not get involved in expenditures out of our office. And there was a good reason for that. We said it was up to him to determine within the budget that we set what he needed and what employees should be paid for different positions. That all changed when they said HR determined our employees were overpaid. 3 of them were redlined. And I argued profusely, this is not, first of all, these positions were unique. Our chief of staff's the only one in the county that has 13 bosses. And they disagreed and stood by their position. We lost all of those employees almost immediately. And the one that was redlined because they were overpaid got almost double when they went somewhere else. So clearly they were not correct in that. My position is we need to get back to where they don't get into our specific budget and we don't get into their specific budget. Because when we got a new chief of staff, suddenly the position was worth more. That gives an appearance that it really wasn't about the position. Whether that's the case or not, it gives the appearance that it wasn't about the position. It was about the individual in the position. And so that individual was redlined, whereas a new individual could come in and not be redlined. I would like to sit down with the exec's office and get back to the way things were, rather than us turning around and saying we're going to approve his things. I think that's not the way to go. I think it will create so much friction between the departments. I also want to point out, while we're removing his exemption for professional services in 23A4 and 24C, we're simultaneously saying, but he doesn't get to sign on our professional services. So we're changing the rules towards him that, nope, you have to bring yours to us, but we're also simultaneously saying, but we don't need you to sign our contracts. And I think we need to treat him the same way we're going to treat ourselves in this situation. I wanted to also point out 4.2A, striking the exemption for bidding of contracts of professional services. I brought to this board that We have not gone out for bids for years for our attorney, and I got crickets up here. And what I will not do is approve a change in an ordinance that we apply to the county exec's office that we don't apply to our own selves. It's been years since we've taken that professional services contract out to bids, and so I'm not willing to put that restriction in here if we're not going to follow it ourselves. 2.4E was the one that just blew my mind. 2.4E is where if the county executive will not sign a contract, we as the board are making the chair of the board the designee for the county executive to sign signatures. Does anybody up here believe that we have the authority to designate who can sign on the behalf of the county executive, and that would stand up in a court of law? I couldn't believe the wording that, let me go down to it real quick. I was shocked. I mean, I started laughing, but I was shocked that any other contract approved by the commission that would otherwise become effective but for the executive's refusal to sign, in which case the commission chairperson shall be the executive's designee for such contracts. I don't even know how to respond to that. I think I would be open to saying any contract approved by the commission, duly and lawfully approved, shall be signed by the executive. But I certainly wouldn't agree that we make our chairperson his designee. I got a good laugh out of that one. And then on 2.1, this is actually, understand the rationale for it on the 35,000, you know, if change orders and things hit 35,000. The only exception I'd like to be looked at is if you say you have a 70 million, or say you have a $20 million project. I believe it should be a percentage of that project as opposed to 35,000, because 35,000 is such a small percentage of that project that it seems almost unrealistic in those situations. And then 2.5A, let me get down there. 2.5A, we're adding a list of any lawsuits with Macomb County that the contractor and or any of the contractor's subcontractors have been involved in over the past 3 years, including any that are currently pending. When we approve a contractor for a relatively significant project, they do not usually already have subcontractors lined up. They do not line up subcontractors until after we approve the project. So it would be almost impossible for them to be able to provide that because there's no reason for them to go out, get proposals, and start hiring subcontractors for a job that they don't yet have. And then there's only two more. The one is the section where they have to supply to our agenda management system for a contract 2 months in advance. What's our current rule on that?
1 month. 1 month.
1 month?
Well, we don't have a deadline for when the contract starts. They have 10 days.
Why don't you come to the microphone, please? Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Crystal.
They have 10 days before the meeting date to get the contract to our office to get put on the agenda. We don't have a deadline as far as when the contract starts.
Oh, no, here it is, 2.5A, I'm sorry. It says, where did you add the 2 months? Okay. Any A purchase or contract requiring commission approval must be submitted according to the commission's adopted procedures at least 2 months prior to the contract start date.
Commissioner, where is that again?
It's 2.5A. I'm sorry, it's 2.5C. Absolutely correct, thank you.
Okay.
They're adding, according to the commission's adopted procedures and instructions, it must be submitted for the appropriate committee meeting at least 2 months prior to the contract start date. I would like to have input from the operations point of view. We don't do it, as to whether or not that's realistic. Might be very realistic. Might not be realistic at all. It might be they don't know what projects they're going to do in a certain given time 2 months ahead of time. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure. And then I only have one other, and that's 4.3D. Let me get down there. We've added modifications to such standard language shall require notice to the commission. And I don't know what that means. Does that mean we're saying what the standard language is above, and anything other than that must come to the commission? I don't know what such standard language is. So I don't know why that sentence was added or what it means. Does anybody remember?
What was that item again, Commissioner? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm talking too fast on these. That's 4.3D. We've added a sentence, and I don't know what the meaning of that sentence is or what the purpose for adding it is.
I believe, if I may. So this is referencing standard language that they would utilize for, standard language for contracts. If they change that standard language, they just got to let you guys know that there's a change in the standard language that they use for every contract with the purchasing manager and corp counsel, it looks like.
Do they use standard language for every contract? Because the vast majority of contracts that we approve are written by the contractors as opposed to the county. Very few are actually written by us.
I believe this is in reference like boilerplate language that we would require to be included if we did have that type of language, unless I'm wrong. It's just making sure they don't make changes to any sort of boilerplate language that we require that they can't change without notifying you guys. It's just like a notification, not us trying to control what is being put in there, I believe.
Also, I don't know the specific example of it, but the concept is that oftentimes in the purchasing department, someone would prepare a contract that's accepted, and then it's kind of battle of the forms where there is then a form going back from the county saying, here's your invoicing, but there's a standard term and condition that's we require to be included in the contract that you gave us. Right? So there's a contract that comes to the county, and then there's standard terms and conditions that would be required by the county to comply with, one, federal regulations if they're federal dollars or the like. On top of that, those, as Kyle had mentioned, sometimes those standard terms and conditions change based on county purchasing policy.
Okay, so this says, to the extent not prohibited by law, these clauses may include. It doesn't say shall include. So if we're going to mandate their inclusion, if we're going to say any deviation from this must requires notice to the commission, we got a may in there, so we're not mandating those conditions.
Correct. That language is existing language in the existing ordinance.
Yes.
And then the
so there's no mandate. So the addition of the modifications is making it a mandate where it wasn't a mandate before.
The addition of the modification is mandating notice to the board of a change.
Yes, but I don't know what a change to what. You're talking like metaphorically about something that I'm not really sure exists.
I think it may be just as simple as there's a contract and the county then says, we agree with this contract, but you have to comply with these terms and conditions that we're giving to you.
Wait a minute, does the county do that, or is that a metaphorical thing?
Again, I'm not in the weeds on that, but that it is very common for counties to provide such standard terms to make sure that they're in compliance with, in particular, federal requirements.
So we're mandating if they change those terms, they notify us, yet we don't even know what those terms are or if they even exist at this moment. But we're mandating if they change those terms that might exist,
well,
we'd be notified.
Yes.
I just want to make sure we're clear.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the case. And if you wanted to know what they were, then you could ask, and the county executive and the purchasing department would give them to you.
All right, and this, I'll relinquish, but while I have you up here, I just want to ask one more question. Would you agree that it would not pass legal muster for us to name the county executive's designee to sign documents?
Well, actually, so that provision is in the existing ordinance, which has been in place for some time.
No, this was an addition.
And
this was an addition.
I think you might be referring to an expansion of the application of that requirement?
No, let's see. No, it's 2.4E, so hold on just a second. 2.4E is an addition. It's an addition. At least it doesn't have a strikeout. It's an addition. It says any other contract approved by the commission that would otherwise become effective, but for the executive's refusal to sign, in which case the commission chairperson shall be the executive's designee for such contracts. That is an addition. That is a new section.
Correct. Referring up to A, that concept of having the commission chairperson being the designee of the executive is embodied in A, which has been in there for some time. And what E?
Under 2.4A?
2.4A. And so it's a matter of expansion of the applicability.
That doesn't mention the board chair. The part that's being stricken? Oh, I see it. I see it. I didn't see that before. Thank you. I see it. And one last thing, just the thing about if we put it in the budget that the other county-wides can approve contracts without the executive's signature. We're not talking about the legal aspect. That's in here. I'm not going to look it up right now. I think that that's dangerous. Just because there's money in budgets doesn't mean that all the county-wide should be approving contracts that the county exec's office isn't aware of. And I could give you an example. We had a county-wide that wanted to hire somebody to install a hole in the floor with a bucket for employees to use the restroom. And I would not want that countywide to have the authority to sign that contract without the knowledge of the county executive. So I think it's important that remain. Thank you.
Commissioner, can you, your first item that you had was 2.3. What was the detail on that one?
The first one, the designee?
Yes.
The first one was 2.4E, but he's right, it was written up above. I never saw that. I never caught that the first time around, because I don't believe we can do that.
Okay.
Do you believe we can do that?
I do.
You believe that we can make somebody the county exec's designee to sign documents?
Under those circumstances.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Haw.
I don't even know how to respond to that last statement. You may believe that. He's not going to believe that. And we're going to end up in court again. And there's one thing that I don't want to see is another damn court case. Excuse my French. This was suggested to improve our process based on a specific circumstance, if I recall correctly. Has this been reviewed with the purchasing department or the finance department to get their input into this document? Or are we putting something together that's going to get us into another court case? I'm fed up with that. We have, and I brought it up in the past, experts that are responsible for purchasing and finance. And he's sitting right there in the back room. I don't see his comments on here anywhere. But we all did get a memorandum from Mark Delden that says, and I'll quote, "We believe several provisions in the proposed documents are in conflict with provisions of charter litigation, that the powers and duties of the commission and the executive flow exclusively from the charter law, not blah, blah, blah." So just an initial review of this, we are setting up another lawsuit. And that was never the intent. I don't believe when we focused on whatever this, and I'm sorry I can't remember, Jeff, but you hit the nail on the head when you said we need to review that and put a policy in place that deals with whatever that issue was. And the comment was made, there's not a lot of revisions to this. Well, I don't know what red looks like to anybody else, but it looks like a lot of revisions to me. We are not looking at what Mark Hackle is doing or not doing. We are looking at an ordinance that's going to live far beyond our current county executive. It's going to be something that we need to have that's workable, that we agree with, that meets our needs and their needs as well, to be able to perform the business of the county. This ordinance, as best I know, hasn't been looked at in I don't know how many years. So it deserved an overview. It deserved an opportunity to update it, and it deserved the attention. You guys put a lot of time in this, so I thank you for that. You can just see it in the amount of changes that are being made. But unless we're dealing with the guy that's got to implement it and make it work, I think we missed a step in the process here. This is not about Mark Hackle or Mark Delden. This is something that's going to live beyond probably, well, certainly me, but most of us in our capacities as commissioners. And when I start hearing words that the chairman of the board can assume the executive responsibility, you know what that tells me? This has been set up for a lawsuit, because that's never going to happen. I don't give a hoot what Oakland County does or Wayne County does when it's applicable to how we function. I care how we function. And to me, statements like that, I didn't even know we were going to have legal involved in this, quite frankly. Where that came from was beyond me. I understand you need an overview to make sure we're not stretching out, but to me, this looks like a prelude to another lawsuit. So my humble suggestion is, I want to thank everybody that worked on it. There was a tremendous amount of work put into it. I've read it 3 times, and to solidify my discussion here, twice we've had to have legal counsel come to that microphone and explain intent. Intent doesn't get anybody anything other than a differing of opinion and back into a courtroom. If that's where we want to go, we can knock on that door now, or we can work with finance and budget and say, what are we trying to fix here, and where's the problem? I really thought that's where we were headed, and I still think we are, but without their input, all we're heading in is into another court case. Thank you, Chair. And thanks again for all the work everybody did on this. I got involved in rewriting an ordinance one time for this group. I think it took like 9 months. Horrible experience. That's why I didn't volunteer for this. Thank you.
Commissioner Matuzak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to hear from our independent counsel, because if people will remember back, the rewriting of this ordinance was part of a settlement/agreement as part of one of our court cases. It was the next step we were going to take. I would just like to hear from him to remind us all why we took this step. I'm not at all opposed to sharing the agreement with the exec's office and the finance office, because I'm actually someone who believes in collaboration, even though we sometimes don't get much collaboration, because I think the idea is to make a better purchasing ordinance than we have at the moment. But if the chair would allow it, I would like to hear from our independent counsel.
Absolutely, Commissioner. That's why he's here.
Sure. What I'd like to do, if it's okay, is just kind of walk through a couple different sources of what was maybe driving a look at this. And Commissioner is correct that there is an overlay because of a legal dispute, one aspect of legal dispute between the county executive and the Board of Commissioners. But there were also other things that were going on here. And if I may, a big chunk of the changes were to bring conformity between the ethics ordinance and the changes that were done in the ethics ordinance, and to make sure that it was reading correctly into the new or updated contracting ordinance. The other aspect is that the contracting ordinance was at least I think it was about 10 years old, so it was kind of due, and that was on staff's mind as well. So reviewing the contracting ordinance, a need to update to incorporate changes to the ethics ordinance, to make sure that was reading in the same way, and then there's also a technical aspect towards the end. It just wasn't reading right as to the prior ordinances being repealed and replaced by a new ordinance, so we had that technical element. And then I think a commissioner had mentioned there was concern about the emergency actions and the emergency contract approval, which was a subset, which is also addressed in here as well. And then there were also concerns about the professional services and how that interplayed between the bidding requirements and also the emergency provisions for approval. And also to bring some clarity into what is a minimum threshold that was required to come before the board for contract approval, and whether it was also a just collecting my thoughts. If you have an amendment to a contract, which is very common with respect to constructions, to make it more clear that any contract amendment would have to come before the board, and so those types of things wove together to come to the board, and so I hesitate to go into matters that we talked about in closed session, but that it clearly was a topic, and a review of the contracting ordinance was a topic that wanted to be done. And so that's when the work group was established, and candidly, I didn't attend or participate in that, but that where there was a particular question here or there, it was sent to us, and we replied to it. And so that process went forward until what we have here. And that Commissioner's Hawes' comment about having collaboration and input, that's an important feature to come up with this, and that gives you a flavor. I don't know. Hopefully, that's responsive to what you're asking for. So there's a number of factors that fit together, and as it relates to a dispute between the board and the executive, some of these provisions over what contract requirements in the ordinance require board approval is to make it more clear, because it wasn't. And another example I would give is, and this is no big secret, but that the executive had a view that the contracting threshold would reset every fiscal year, right? And that's not what the ordinance said, right? It said for the life of it's for the contract. It doesn't matter what fiscal year it is, and so that was made more clear. So some of those elements are here, but at the end of the day, this indeed is a matter of policy for the board, and so I'll stop talking, if that's helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair Brown.
Thank you. Thank you to the committee to spent the time and effort to review this document. A lot of time and effort was spent in meticulous detail, as you see on the document. So that's first, but it's a draft. It's a draft to put together ideas that took care of a culmination of thoughts that went into this, because it hadn't been done in a long time. We have a brand new board that never had looked at this contracting office prior to that. So there's a lot of elements coming into this to put this document together. And, we have to get a document together that we all have consensus on first before we talk to the executives, to the administration about what their opinion is of it, and see what potential conflicts there are in that, and see what, if anything, we can do to come together to try to get a document that everyone can live with. We're not there yet. This is the first time we've all looked at it collectively as a group. Many good comments have come, and there's probably more to come. And those need to be looked at and addressed and fine-tuned. But this is a starting point. This is the first time we've looked at this, and sometimes Commissioner Kleinfeld, Commissioner Kraft, maybe Sabatini, we've been looked at this in the years past, but it's the first time we've looked at freshening this thing up. And, it's a work in progress, commissioners, and it's a starting point. It's not the ending point. We're not voting on it today or tomorrow or the next week. And we'll go through and develop consensus and put forward a good document that works for everyone. There are things that needed to be tightened up and clarified on many levels, big and some small. So, we're going to do that, and I'm confident we'll get through there. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your leadership. Thank you.
Commissioner Farrington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just in the last couple of comments, a lot was said. First of all, I was not the leader of this group. No one ever told me that. So I would have ran things a little differently. No, the four of us were asked by the chair of the board to participate. I did find it a little interesting that all four were first termers. So I would not doubt that we could have done a better job. I do find it interesting that, two commissioners have strong disagreement with words that already exist in the document from 10 years ago. So, we went to our attorney on many of these questions because, we had questions, again, 3, 4, 5. After that, it was like, okay, Crystal, what was the nexus of why this is in here? Pete, what's the nexus of why this is in here? Why, and this is the product, as Chair Brown said, that exists now. This is not ready for the full approval, nor would I intend it to be. While I am not looking for agreement from the executive's office, absolutely they should be part of the process and the input. So in case anyone's doubting that, that's the only way we should do this. Not looking for agreement because inherently this document is built to disagree with that office because it's a checks and balance. But at the same point, there's going to be things that we miss or they miss that having their input will be crucial to a better document. So I guess that's all I have to say at this point. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you, Chair. Along the same line, I believe we need to come to a consensus in the board before we scoot this out to have other people look at it, because if we don't have consensus here before we have other departments review this, they're not reviewing what we think. Also, it's been suggested that the executive approving some of our things and we approving some of their things, we wear different hats. The executive runs the county day to day. We're the legislative branch. So I don't expect us to have exactly the same balanced functions back and forth as far as approvals of budgets and expenditures and things. So I don't really agree with that. Also, I don't know if this is a question for staff or for who, but do we have a history of the ordinance from past times? Not only the current ordinance, but histories. Would it be possible to find out when the Board of Commissioner chairs signing for the executive statement in that ordinance was put in? I would be interested in when that was put in and how it read at that time and sort of a little bit of flavor around that. Because if it's been in since the beginning of time, I don't have much problem with it. If it was just put in the last reiteration of the ordinance, then I'd like to maybe think about it a little bit harder. That's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Chair. Again, just a couple of thoughts. I somewhat agree with Commissioner Hall. The executive office has made mention of the fact they've read it. They'd like to get together, have a meeting to discuss some of the procedures that we're talking about. They've offered to do this. Commissioner Hall has asked for a postponement, and if she's looking for a second, I'll give that. And I think that the more minds that get together, not only the commissioners that adopted this or put it together, but also getting some of the thoughts from the executive. You know, you can't say that they're going to say absolutely no to some of these. We might have to tweak it a little bit, and they might agree to all of this in different form. But unless they have it in front of us and we can sit in front of them at the same discussion, I think it's what he said and she said, and it gets back to what they said. So it doesn't work that way. It's the executive office. He's willing to sit down with us. I think we should give him the courtesy of doing that before any of this thing is voted on today. Thank you. That's all I have.
Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Commissioner Farrington's 100% correct, and I don't know how I missed that before, and I apologize for that because that is something I should have definitely caught, and I'm very curious as to find out when it was put in there. I would, when you meet or you're discussing, please keep in mind, and our attorney wouldn't have the history, and neither would any of those board members, that there was an agreement prior to my getting on that those two departments, just the 8th floor county exec's office and this floor, that they don't get into what we contract for, you know, who we hire and all that, and that we don't get into theirs. And that was put together so that one of us couldn't use it to try to punish the other. And it goes both ways. As I said, we lost 3 employees because, in my opinion, they stepped into our territory. So it goes both ways. So I'd like to see that. You guys didn't have the benefit of that history, and that's not your fault. And I think both Commissioner Hahn and I assumed that our attorney was involved. I tend to be a little bit harder, assuming how much influence the attorney may or may not have had, and he may not have had as much influence as I assumed he did. So, so when I rip something apart, I apologize because I don't mean to be ripping apart the work of the individuals. And then the last thing I'll say is the concern about 2.4D, where exceptions to the executive signature, a contract entered into by a countywide elected official pursuant to an appropriations ordinance approved by the commission. we approve a appropriation ordinance in very large terms. We approve contract services. We don't approve individual projects. And I know that the charter makes reference to the county executive signing contracts. If you remove his authority to do that for all the county-wides, that's a huge portion of the county that he doesn't, he's losing some continuity with other departments and what's happening and everything else. So I would, I hope that we don't do that. Having said that, I do understand the reason for doing it and the need for county-wides to be able to come to the board, specifically if they need an attorney or something of that nature. And we did need to shore that up. So sorry that I came down so hard on those. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Trying to get back to my screen here. Seeing no more speakers, I believe right now we're at the point where we have to have some work groups with the executive's office and see where we can work through some of these questions that we've already discussed here today. Obviously, this is a draft starting point, so I remember as Chair Brown 10 years ago when we started this process, it was a lengthy process. Looking at this, Commissioner Hall, it's a lot easier than it was 10 years ago, to put it that way. So I think we can certainly work through some of these issues and questions, and I agree with Commissioner Farrington in regards to bringing these other departments in and having a conversation as a work group. That's how we're going to get a policy that works for everybody collectively. So today obviously was the discussion purposes. I guess we'll leave it up to staff to get some work groups going. Chair, is that acceptable? Okay, so we'll leave it at your purview in getting staff set that up, and whoever would like to participate in those work groups, please let staff know, and we'll start setting up some meetings and having some discussions in regards to this. Fair enough? Okay, so I guess, do we have to vote? Is there a vote to just have discussion? Receive and file. Just receive and file? Okay. So we just need well, the motion's already on the floor, so we just need the vote.
So we are voting to
just receive and file. It's just discussion purposes. And that was made by Commissioner Haw, I believe, initially.
Yes, it was.
And supported by Commissioner Romano.
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay. Next item is public participation. This is an opportunity for the public to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes on any issue. Anyone from the public like to speak? Going once, twice. We'll close public participation. Commissioner comments. Commissioner Kleinfeld, I hear something.
Yeah,
Should I give you the floor, or are you going to try and push that button?
I was trying to.
All right, Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Three things. The first is with regard to what we just discussed, the very specific ones that are of significant concern to me. I will type them up so that you know exactly what I'm looking at and what my concern is when you're taking a look at this. I also just want to remind everybody, we just read in the newspaper about the settlement of a lawsuit, and for the commissioners that are in their first term, you haven't seen Corp Counsel on a regular basis in front of us discussing all the lawsuits, but previously we used to have regular closed sessions discussing what lawsuits were going on in the county, what stage they were in, what was going on. And I miss those, and I would like to get back to that. I think it's important. And I'm having a hard time remembering approving this one, and there's been a couple other like that. So I think if he's coming in front of us, it would be a lot easier for me to remember, oh, that's right, we approved that, or we didn't approve that. I don't know if everybody else remembers approving that last one. By the same token, last year, obviously, I tried to get the board interested in putting money in the budget for us to have our own lobbyist. The board was not interested in that at the time. We have not, in this term of these new commissioners, I believe we've had one presentation of our lobbyist. If there's been two, there's been one in a year and a half. That did also not used to be the case. We used to at least get quarterly, but just reminding you, I mean, there was 4-year terms being fought in Lansing and had commissioners up here not known directly about that. This board would never even know it was being discussed up there, and it was something very specific to the commission. So I would like to also get back to the practice of getting those reports and being able to ask the county lobbyists questions like we used to. That's all I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if this is a question for staff, but we just received an email today from Carlin, our HR director, about basically closing the county for Juneteenth and giving, it's been recognized as an official holiday by the Supreme Court. And I'm just wondering if there's anything we have to do budgetarily to make that right or to make that note. I know she mentioned something about, we're doing something different this year than going forward. It'll be part of the contract negotiations and things like that. But I just wasn't sure if there's anything we have to do as the board in terms of the budget. So if staff could take a look at that and let me know, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Farrington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to concur with Commissioner Kleinfeld on the lobbyist item. I was one of the ones that said we don't need to last year. After being here 18 months, I'd say it is something we should look at in the budget. So wherever the chairman went.
Still here.
No, the chairman. In fact, I was at Mackinac for the big event this last week. Talked to Oakland County, talked to Wayne County. Their boards are represented. So it's something we need to look at, and I'll be glad to work with whoever, chair and vice chair, to work on that, and the chair of the finance. Thank you.
Seeing no other speakers, we'll go to item 13, which is closed session to discuss confidential attorney-client privilege memo dated January 12th, 2022 from independent counsel. I need a motion to enter into closed session.
So moved, Romano.
Made by Romano, supported by Haw. Mm-hmm.
Motion passes 8-0.
Next item is adjournment. Need a motion to adjourn. Made by Haw, supported by Nard. Please vote.
Bill, would you read this one? Thank you, Chairman. And I missed it? Who did it? Good job, Joe. Harold?
Snooze, you lose.
Motion passes 11-0.